I saw 150 million before my very eyes turn to 6 million. I don't know how I am still alive, but I died. Everything in uniform traumatized me. So you wouldn't believe it. Anytime I see a military officer on uniform, I just feel like the person is sent to me. Sometimes even Boy Scout, I cannot do anything to me. I get traumatized by it. When you are indebted, you can't be fine. The transactions you are having today, they are also transactions that are bigger tomorrow. Listen to me. Integrity is capital. There are greater stuff that you have to do in the future. If you kill it now, if you spoil it now, you will never have access to bigger things in the future. Hi, my name is Akin Akinpelu. I am super excited about what you're about to watch and listen to. I spoke in this podcast series the darkest moments of my life, and I have never shared this outside. I probably would have talked about it a little here, a little there, but this is the first time I'm speaking boldly about it, and it was about how I got into a debt of over $100,000 in 2007 in my life, and everything on uniform, including Boy Scout, that can do nothing to me, was looking for me, and I was traumatized. I shared inside this episode how I got into it and how you should not get into debt. But if you're already in one, how do you get yourself out of it and how do you adjust? Guess what is going to be the most transformative podcast you've ever watched or listened to in your life? Let's get into the room and let's see how it happens. Do all you can to ensure that you share and share to everybody around you. This is going to be epoch in your life. I remember a very, very life transforming experience I had many years ago, particularly in 2007. And I will never forget what happened to me that season of my life. So I woke up into the newspapers and I began to read about how many stockbrokers or agents began to slump and die. And I listened to the radio. If you guys remember people like Abayomi Babulujo and the rest of them who were great stock guys who would come and speak to us about the stock, I began to hear a lot of things going on. Then I hit on the newspaper, on the news. I think I was listening to Fox News that day, and the Fox News, it was just not encouraging. I knew that there was an economic upheaval on the earth, and so that sent a very powerful signal to me. And guess what the signal was? I have lost everything that I ever worked for in my life. So at that time, let me give you a backstory. I had an idea where I got young people into, and that was in 2005. So I sat down with a senior friend who taught me a little bit about how the stock market works and a few things about the forex market. So I sat down one day in the cafeteria and I saw a lot of people. They were just spending their monies, and they were just. I particularly felt that they were just wasting money. And I later on in life, I think that those guys were just being comfortable, but looking at where I was coming from, it was pretty different, and I sat down and there I curated an idea. I got an idea to say, what can I do if I think this is a problem and young people are wasting money in court? What can I do? And I curated an idea to say I would help them invest their money. When I was curating about how I'm going to invest their monies for them, I had no idea. So I sat down with this senior friend. He taught me how the stock market works. So when I pick up the newspaper, I knew how to interpret the stock page. I knew what the opening looks like. I knew what the closing looks like. I could tell organizations doing well. I could tell people these are the things to look into before you begin to invest very well. I remember when Japol Oil came out and Japol was going to come open it to the public, and I noticed that was the busiest time of my life where a lot of people were just asking me, do we do this? Do we do that? So it was such an interesting time. So I started a business, and that business was called LBE Investment. And LBE Investment, guess what we do? We do a few things. Number one, we do things around the stock market like a license. Number two, we do mutual funding where you put a lump sum of money together together, and at the end of a period, you bring it, you come pick it up with interest. And the fourth one was on Forex, and the fourth one was a bit on real estate. But people knew us more because of the stock market. And guess what? Young people were really, really crazy about the fact that they could see somebody encouraging them to now begin to put the monies they could have wasted and invest it together, and they were really excited about it. I remember the first time I was going to call a meeting for people to say, we want to bring you into this investment platform. And guess what? You're going to pay 5,000 naira, I think, for processing fee, and they showed up in the hall and it was massive. And in about a month, you've had about 200 people pass through ours. Then I had like 12 friends, 10 to 12 friends that I employed together. And I said, let's do this together. And they were scattered around the clusters, and they began to bring in more people, customers. And guess what? For everybody you bring in, you get like a 10% cut or something. So they were really excited. They were even happy. And guess what? The business continued and it was good. And so people began to invest into the stock market. What was their process if you about? We tell them, oh, this is where you should invest to. This is the best place to look into. This is the amount to go. And we just become like the last thing before them, and we get them their CSCS so they can have access to picking up things like their dividends, their bonus, and as the case may be. Guess what happened? And I woke up one day listening to news. I think it was Fox News that day, and there was economic upheaval in the world, and it was said that the entire world was going through a downturn. What does that mean to me? I got on the radio. These were the days you would listen to men like Abayomi Babuluju and the rest of them come and give you stock update. These were the people we're learning from those days, and we began to hear something different again. They had lost 90% of their money. There were like 3 different people on radio that was reported that they slumped and died at those points. And at that time, it meant a lot to me. Tell me why. Let me tell you why it meant a lot to me. Because beyond the stock market I was helping people to invest into, about 90 people had put their monies together in form of mutual funds to say in the next 2, 3, 4 years, I'm going to put my money together and I'm going to get 300% increase, at the end of the day. So it was like a plan for them. So at that time, he was reading over what you would call 150 million naira in the times that we are in at that time. And guess what? I saw 150 million before my very eyes turn to 6 million. I don't know how I am still alive, but I died. I must have died mentally. I must have died psychologically. I must have died in all ways. I got into a level of frustration, a depression that I could not even, I was dying inside, but I would come out smiling and people didn't know. Guess what? There were people who had a lot of expectations, people who looked up to me, people who wanted to learn from me, people that called themselves my mentee. They noticed that stage of my life, I truly locked up. I don't know if you ever had the feeling of indebtedness, particularly when it comes to financial indebtedness. It's a lot. It's a lot because there was this constant cringing and pressure in my heart. There was this anxiety on daily basis. Panic became my friend. I couldn't even breathe well. I probably will breathe multiple times in multiple ways that I can't even explain. Why? Because the weight of being indebted. You really don't want to be in that phase. But if you are there, I mean, that's why we're having this conversation. And guess what? Even so, people who respected me, who had money with me, they began to look down on me. They began to talk to me anyhow. And guess what? When they began to talk to me anyhow, I understood why they had to do that. Because see, when it comes to money issues, people can truly respect you. But the moment you owe people money, I want you to know that you will lose every respect that you have. You will lose every dignity that you have. And the people that you think truly rate you, you will find out that they don't even respect you again. I'm telling you, I remember one of the people who used to call me prodigy, who I used to call a prodigy at that time. One even threatened me with the police and said he was coming to my house with the police, and he was using "sir" to say he was going to come arrest me. He said, "Sir, we are coming to arrest you. There's nowhere." One even told me that this is my money for masters. I'm supposed to travel abroad. You have cut down my dreams. You have cut down my vision. I got all kinds of messages. I have some of them archived till date. People wrote me things that I will read, I would cry. I would enter into my face again and say, I would even say, God, this is not what I signed out for. Because the first 1 year or 2 years of the business, all of this these guys got their monies. They were fine, so they knew it was not fraud. They knew that it was not. It was not a big deal. They got their interest. They got their dividends. They got the interest on the mutual funds. As the case may be. At that time, I'd even made some small investments into people. Somebody was helping with me with the forex market. And that one also crashed the entire money. Even after I crashed mine too, and till date, I can even tell you as we speak that the guy is still owing me lump sum of millions of naira. As at that time, probably was like a 7 million naira. Remember, 7 million in 2006 or 2007 is quite some money. If I'm to just do a cumulative of what the person is owing me now, I'm not sure the person can even think about what that cumulative is, as the case may be. So it was really difficult. Everything in uniform, because people began to threaten me and tell me that they are going to send me to jail. Everything in uniform traumatized me. So you wouldn't believe it. Anytime I see a military officer on uniform, I just feel like the person is sent to me. Sometimes even Boy Scout that cannot do anything to me, I get traumatized by it. I can remember a very powerful story one day. I was going from Lagos to Umuahia, so I went through Owerri Airport, Sam Mbakwe Airport, precisely, and I entered with a man, a great man, who later became the vice president of this nation, and we had a conversation. The man loved me. I'd connected with the man, and guess what? As we came down the aircraft, so the man couldn't talk to me so much in the aircraft, so he felt indebted. So he gave me his card and said, "Let's connect in Lagos." And I said, "Oh, thank you, sir." And the PA also was so warm to me and all of that, and guess what? We moved. Then I got to where I would pick up my luggage. I saw who this man was, But before I got to where I'll pick up my luggage, listen, as we came down the aircraft, I I helped the man to carry his suitcase. Then I saw three police officers walk towards me. When I saw three police officers walk towards me, listen, I died again, because that was the season where I knew that, I honestly cannot tell why I did not commit suicide. I honestly could not tell. Somebody was asking me, and I said, "Oh, why didn't I get married? I wanted to get married." I said, "I was indebted. I wanted to be sure I could finish paying the debt before I could even marry. I didn't even want such news to come after marriage, so that my fiancé or my wife will think that I'm into something he or she does not understand, And I said, no, I'm going to do all I can to pay back. So as I came down the aircraft, I saw three police officers. I just felt, wow. Why didn't you guys arrest me in our church? Why didn't you arrest me in my street? Why didn't you arrest me, somewhere? Why is it at the aircraft when I just created an impression with a man that I feel was very important to my life? And guess what? When the three men came, I just knew if I was putting on a suit, just know that the suit shrinked. I shrinked inside the suit, and the suit became a parachute inside of me. I was dying inside. But there was something else that happened. It was a game changer. So I saw the men who came to me, they saluted me. When the men saluted me, I was like, how you were shrinking before? You just gain your steez back or your composure. I could now speak out. My voice went down. I could now speak out. It was interesting. I could laugh. I could talk like I was still in control, with the man with me, and after 2 minutes, I found out again that this man, who am I that people will salute me at the airport? So I noticed that I was being stupid with myself, because there's no reason why people will come salute me at the airport. Guess what? It dawned on me that the man standing by my side was the person that they were saluting. There was nothing about my life to salute at that time, and the man, received their salutation, and I knew that I was being unwise. And these officers came, took the bags from me. When they took the bags from me, and the man just waved me a goodbye and gave me his card. When I got back to where we pick up my luggage, I saw that this was a powerful name that I saw, and the name was Yemi Osibajo. At that time, at best you are talking about him being an attorney general, but he was running his firm in Ikoyi at that time. I can't remember the exact name. Is it CUC Chambers or something? I can't remember what it was at that time, and because when you are indebted, you can't be fine. Listen, the feeling of indebtedness is the feeling that puts you under what you will call anxiety. He puts you under panic. He puts you under constant weight that crushes you emotionally, psychologically. And at the end of the day, you lose your voice where it is. It's a thing of shame. It's a thing where I don't even plan for my enemies to ever get into it. But let me tell you a few things. So when that happened to me, I adjusted. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is when you get yourself into this situation, don't deny it. It is true that this has happened to you. What do you need to do to get out of it? Number one, there's a level of adjustment. What is adjustment? I couldn't be living a life that looks flamboyant when I'm owing people. You won't believe that one of the people that owed me money that I told to invest for me bought a car for me to come and pray over because the person thought I was spiritual and I could pray. But you were owing me money, guy. But guess what? This guy buys a car, never paid me till date as we speak, and brought the car for me to pray over. And I just had to be a Christian. I just had to be a Christian. I'm not even sure if the prayer I was praying was true or I was cursing the person in my heart. I just knew that I mumbled some words out and I just walked away from the place, and the guy took his car and began to use his car. And that time it was a four-wheel drive. It was a very, very good car. And this was really, and this just tells you how human beings are funny. Human beings can be wicked. Human beings can truly be wicked. How can you owe me and I also dedicate your car, at that time? So, I couldn't live that kind of life. Can I tell you, I couldn't buy a car for a long time. I couldn't buy a car. In fact, I adjusted. My lifestyle adjusted. My social circle, I got adjusted. Listen to me. You won't believe it. I never used a DSTV. All through the time in my life, DSTV, guess what I was using? I was using a Go TV. I was using the GoTV. In fact, let me shock you. I used the GoTV till I got married. So many years ago, I got married. This was solid, but I used it. It became a stone of memory for me to always remember where I was coming from. I'm telling you, I adjusted my lifestyle. I remember I had to get a car for the first time, probably, you would say about 10 years later. I, I made up my mind that by integrity, I was going to pay those debts. Let me tell you how I paid those debts. I got a job. When I got a job, I decided to enslave myself with the job. I remember I sat down with one of my directors, and my paycheck at that time was small money. It was less than 200,000 at that time. But it was okay if I was not indebted. But if you look at what my situation was, it didn't make sense. I needed to 3x that money. I remember I spoke with my director and I said, "Can I do three people's role? How can I do more? How can I?" And they said, "What are you saying?" And I said, "This is my situation. I had to work morning till evening and I would do evening till morning. I had to go to a school where I was in charge of prep for the boarding house, all kinds of things. And guess what? I was constantly living with headaches and pressure. I remember that all the people that owed me that we could get across to, one of my associates, then I called him and he spoke to them. "This is situation of things, but I still want to pay you this money. I'm not going to put it under the carpet." Many of them had even forgotten. And we negotiated, said, "We are going to give you 40 to 50% of your money. You've made your capital anyway, over time. So we're going to give 40 to 50% of this money just to prove that there's integrity in the heart." And guess what? I worked for 3 years. It took me tireless work for about 40 months to pay up my entire debt. So somebody asked, "What about the people you worked with that you were paying?" I said, all of them went on with their lives. Many of them went abroad. Many of them never even remembered. They didn't even call me to check on me because when you are indebted, it's truly a feeling of being alone. You can be in the midst of people, but you will truly be alone. So how do you get out of debt? One of the things you must first understand is you have to adjust. You have to adjust. Don't deny the situation. When you are indebted financially, it's not the time to be running up and down. It's not the time to be living a flamboyant life as though nothing happened to you. No, You need to adjust. You need to adjust, knowing that times may not be like the other times that you have lived. Once you adjust, I want you to own up to say, how do I get to pay this money? So begin to look for opportunities. Opportunities are so golden and so powerful that you just need to ask. You activate opportunities by asking. I went to meet my director. I began to do three people's jobs, so I could 3x my money, and I paid for 3 years, 40 months of my life. I remember the last day I paid at the 40th month a particular money. I truly cried. I shed tears, and I said, wow, truly it must have been God that helped me, because I'm not sure I was myself for a period of many, many years. I want to say this too. If you owe people money, please don't treat them as though they have not done anything big for you. Listen to me, don't lock up. Don't try to take their cut them off your phones. Don't try to switch off your phones. Own up to say, this is it, I'm going to pay it. Even if they want you to go and sign, some undertaking to say you are going to do it, you own up to do it and do all the you can to ensure you get it done. Guess what? One of the mistakes I don't want you to make is don't get a loan to pay a loan. I mean, somebody offered me that, and I almost did it. Then I spoke to a financial mentor, and he said, this does not make sense. Please don't get a loan to pay a loan. Many of you are owing a lot of apps monies now. So you started by little trick. You took from this, You started with a little money. So from 3 apps to 6 apps, from 6 apps to 10 apps, and they are looking for you. It's not worth it. The shame around it is not worth it. So if you don't have to, please don't do it. And if you do it, you have to create a system to be able to pay it up. So after the third adjustment there is for you to own up and ensure that you paid. I also speak about communication. Please communicate with them. Because the transactions you are having today, they are also transactions that are bigger tomorrow. Listen to me. Integrity is capital. Integrity is capital. It is capital. There are greater stuff that you have to do in the future. If you kill it now, if you spoil it now, you will never have access to bigger things in the future. Sometimes it's a recommendation from people that you were truly open to. I remember one of the people that I was truly open up to, and I probably paid at the third year. I remember that this person single-handedly worked out a bigger deal for me. Did I lose relationship those period? Yes, I lost relationships with some people. I really feel bad that that ever happened to me. But guess what? You can't be more Catholic than the Pope. I had already died. I was already in shame. And there was nothing else I could do with my life. I truly look back today, and I was not proud of it. But guess what? I'd done all I could to ensure that I could appease people in the best way that I could till I could get out of it. Listen to me. The feeling of indebtedness is not so good. Please, young people, friends, try to stay away from it. If you have to work it out, work it out. Someone said, what about, does it mean it's bad to take loan? No. It's not wrong to take a loan if you're using it to run a business and you can multiply it. Don't get a loan for what you don't have capacity to multiply the loan to do. Does that make sense? So in your adjustment, go make money. When you make money, manage money, multiply the money, and use it to pay your loan. When you're paying back your loan, try not to be under pressure. I need you to be very, very cautious of what you are doing. The pressure on you cannot be more than what has happened. You must create a system to systematically pay. Don't use emotions or the threat of one to quickly pay one and leave the other one. You have to work from the place of importance and urgency to ensure that you can systematically create that. I truly hope that this can help you. And I truly hope that everybody listening to this podcast, you would get out of debt, or you would tell somebody to get out of debt, or help people not to get into debt. It's not a good feeling, but guess what? The panic will end one day. The pressure will end one day. The depression is going to end one day. The anxiety is going to end one day. And the weight on your shoulder that is crushing you and making you to shrink in your identity is going to end one day. Another thing is that I think you can take time to really speak to God about it. You know why? Because that has a way of giving you a comforting feel. The debt will still be there, but He will keep you fresh alive to be able to pay up the debt. You get it, Jesus? You need to be alive. You need to be active. Your heart needs to be a bit okay for you to keep living. You see? So it won't pay the debt, but it will keep you fresh and alive to pay the debt. You don't want to transfer that debt payment to your spouse if you kill yourself, or if that transfer it to your children. Remember that prophet that died and they came to pick up the children and the wife as collateral. So there's no point for that, you see. So talk to God about it, and it's going to bring you out of it. I'm going to see you at the top. Please, you can write me and send me messages at any point. And I want to hear from you what you think about this particular podcast, and let me know how this touched you and what your situation or what your circumstance was and how you came out of it. My name is Akin Akinpelu. I'm a professor of leadership and I'm a pastor of the Eden Center. I'm a cosmopolitan believer. I believe in one thing, that the kingdoms of this world must become the kingdom of our God and that of his Christ. And that is my life mantra. God bless you.